Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Lori, and today I'm going to do a video that I'm really excited about. I'm going to talk about the 3D body, our 3D physical form, versus the 5D physical form, and the differences between it. The reason I'm talking about it today is because, one, the human form was actually designed in a fifth dimensional consciousness. And one of the things we're doing now that we find ourselves in a third dimensional consciousness or field dimension is that we are moving back into this fifth dimensional consciousness. And not only are we moving back into that dimension, but our physical form is as well, right? We are starting to remember this and acknowledge this, right? That's why we're coming back into the body. And the physical form is already holding the ability to be in a fifth dimensional consciousness. Everything is already inside, literally designed. I'm not talking about, it's all inside of us and, I'm talking about the physical design of it is the same design as the fifth dimensional form that was originally dropped down onto Earth when she was in a fifth dimensional consciousness, when she first originated, when she first created herself, because she is a being of consciousness and she intended for her experience to begin in a fifth dimension. So the physical form that was fifth dimensional is this same form, except in a denser consciousness, in a denser field. And everything that works inside of us now that we're just starting to wake up to is what works and worked in the fifth dimension. So I'm really excited to share this information. This is one of the chapters in my book. And it just popped in today to share this piece. So this will be a remembrance for some of you, and some of you may be like, I don't know about this. So you can turn the video off. It doesn't resonate, but here we go. Okay. It's another one of those kind of stories, right? So, Earth was designed in a fifth dimension, and the human form was designed in a fifth dimension, meaning that the consciousness that it held, the actual physical body was holding a fifth dimensional consciousness, not the light being that came in, just the physical form, okay? The physical form was designed to enable or allow all different types of consciousnesses and light beings to come down onto Earth and to participate in this vast array of consciousnesses to be experienced inside a form, right? That was what was so magical and amazing about the Earth, that she opened herself and allowed herself to bring other consciousnesses and light beings down on her to experience this fifth dimensional consciousness, which allowed for a variety of experiences, emotions, thought, beliefs, and then shift into that seventh dimensional field that it was intending and designed itself to do. Okay, so when it was designed by 12th dimensional. Okay, this information that comes to me from the Galactic Federation of Light, and it is channeled through me as energy and frequency. And that is where I get my information. So I don't read anything. I don't watch anybody else. This is all pure information that just comes directly into me. So this is what I was told. 12th dimensional light beings created the light. Let's start with this, the DNA. This will be easier. The DNA is the structure, basically, that began and created the form. Without DNA, there is no form. The DNA was designed by 12th dimensional light beings for the sole intention of creating this form. And so they took light codes, and I'm making this very simple to understand. It's a little bit more complex, but for simplicity's sake, we can just digest it in this way. They took light codes that were vibrating at 12th dimensional frequency, and these light codes held everything that was going to be needed in order for the physical form to be able to stand on this Earth in the fifth dimensional consciousness or dimension and exist, right? So it was intricately designed with intense intentions of how all the cells were going to be created in order to multiply to create the physical form. And what they had to do with these light codes is they understood that it was at a 12th dimensional frequency or dimension, and this light needed to be held inside of a 5th dimensional form. Remember, the form itself was going to be vibrating at a 5th dimensional frequency or consciousness. And so these light codes had to be held inside of a form. And it was going to be creating that 5th dimensional form. So it had to be vibrating at that 5th dimensional frequency. And so they had to figure out how they were going to bring this 12th dimensional light down into a 5th dimensional consciousness in order to design this form. And so what they did is they figured out that crystalline, which is what we're all talking about right now, right? The crystalline nature or physicality has the ability to hold something, hold light in a structure or form within a 5th dimensional form, and allow that form to create and to be, to live, to experience. So they moved it into a crystalline nature, a crystalline form. And they created these strands within it, 12 strands because they were 12th dimensional beings. And these strands held all the light codes that would ever be needed for this human to exist, including the divine blueprint or the blueprint that the light being or consciousness that was going to come down and participate in that 5th dimensional form, that blueprint, meaning the why of that consciousness coming in, was going to be held in that DNA as well. And so here is this DNA in a 12-strand structure that holds all the light codes that creates and forms the 5th dimensional form. And the other thing that was pertinent in the design of the human in the 5th dimension was the amount of light quotient, whatever you want to call it, the amount of light that the light being was going to be able to bring in and reside inside of this physical form with. There was a percentage. And in the 5th dimension, that percentage was it was in the 20 percentile, somewhere around there. 18 to 20 something percent, 21, 22%, somewhere around there. And that was held in the etheric body, which the human had in the 5th dimension, right? And so they figured that out so that the form could be able to hold that in the etheric body. They designed the subtle bodies because even in the 5th dimension, there was still going to be emotions, there was still going to be experiences, consciousnesses, thoughts, beliefs. These kinds of things were going to be experienced in the consciousness of a 5th dimension. There's still that experience. And so they needed to design a way in which the human form could digest and digest it and explain it to the human. That's not the word I'm looking for, but what's it called? Oh, I hate it when I can't think of words. But anyway, the subtle bodies translate it into emotions. They translate the consciousness into thoughts, translate it into beliefs, things like that. But it's not the same experiences in the 3rd dimension, not even close. So then there's the subtle bodies. There is the electrical grid system, right? Inside the 5th dimensional form. So the electrical grid system, just like the electrical grid system that we have right now, the electrical grid system is the 12 energy centers. The 12 energy centers are the 7 inside the physical form and the 5 that reside outside of the physical form. And they are the channel. So there's a channel that comes in. There's all these meridians that move the energy out from that channel and from these 7 and 12 energy centers, right? And the channel and the energy centers, 12 energy centers, connect the human, the 5th dimensional human, to their higher self and their I am presence. There's an ego. Believe it or not, there's an ego in the 5th dimension, and the ego is designed to keep the actual physical body safe. So not harming itself, meaning doesn't jump off a cliff, doesn't drown himself, doesn't burn his hand or her hand, right? It keeps the human safe. So it allows the human to understand its boundaries, what it's capable of and what it's not capable of. the ego structure. What else? Did I miss anything? I think that's it. So those are the ways in which the human was designed in the fifth dimension. When the light being dropped in, or the consciousness dropped in, like you, right? You are a light being that dropped in. You're a consciousness that dropped in. But in the fifth dimension, when you drop in, because you are vibrating at a higher frequency, you are instantly aligned to your channel. You're instantly aligned to your higher self and I am present. You are instantly connected to the light being that you are, which is your etheric body. You have complete knowingness of everything that's going on, right? You're aware of the guides that have dropped in with you. You're aware of that electrical cord that goes up to any sort of galactic families that you drop down from, angelic realm. So there is a light that turns on as soon as you drop in. You're connected to that channel, you're on, and it's time to go, and you start to play. And you're being guided by the higher self in that fifth dimensional space. So of course, as you're playing, you're in the present moment, you're in the now moment, you manifest and intend and create in every now moment. The consciousness is at a vibrational frequency that there is no negative or bad. There's nothing harming the human that they're experiencing. It's at a which is why the earth created herself in a fifth dimensional form in the get-go. She never wanted to move into a third dimensional space. She knew how challenging that would be. So the fifth dimension was challenging enough from her eyes, basically, so to speak. So there was all this consciousness that the human was now experiencing. And they had this whole way of experiencing the subtle bodies, the ego, the higher self, the I am presence, the divine blueprint deep down inside, all these things, the everything, right? And that is how the fifth dimensional human lived. Of course, you could really see through your hands. It was very light. It was a very light form. It didn't have as much density like we do. The foods that were consumed were light foods. Very little food was needed to be consumed. It was just a very different time. Millions of years ago. So what happened? We are now in a third dimensional form. I'm not going to go into the fall because that's an entirely separate video. I've written the chapter on that, and it was a doozy of a chapter to write, but we are in a third dimensional form, and this form is the exact same form that existed millions of years ago as a fifth dimensional consciousness, or in the fifth dimensional field. They didn't change anything about our form except for two things. So when we and the earth shifted down into a third dimensional consciousness, there is matter, there is density, there is a slowing down of everything. Time slows down, energy slows down, consciousness slows down, all of this slows down until the physical body starts to become a form, a much more dense form. So these beings that designed the fifth dimensional human understood this consciousness, that it was now going to be dropped in. Because from a third dimensional perspective, with the earth in the third dimensional field, it needed to now move into a fifth dimensional field. And this was going to take a hell of a lot of work. And it needed light workers. So it didn't just need volunteers, meaning light beings and consciousness that wanted to just volunteer, be a part of the Earth's experiment. That's what happened in the fifth dimension. There were no light workers. There was no need for a light worker in the fifth dimension. There were just volunteers, beings that wanted to drop in and volunteer. No light workers were needed because it wasn't challenging to move from a fifth dimensional. It wasn't challenging in the sense that the earth needed assistance by humans to shift herself up and shift the human up. So into a seventh dimension. When you go down into a third dimension, forget about it. The density is choking. It's claustrophobic. I mean, if you start to recognize how challenging it is to get into your body, it's freaking claustrophobic. That's the third dimension, right? So the earth knew that it was going to need a hell of a lot of assistance from beings of light that were going to come in and assist her by holding light, by purging light, by purifying light, by doing whatever it was it needed to do to assist humanity and the earth to come back to where it was. So the earth was denser, right? And the human form was denser. But everything that we have inside of us right now, we had in the fifth dimension and is awakening within us right now. There's nothing new. We have everything we need inside of us. Two things were different though. Two things they had to adjust. The light quotient that was coming down as a light beam that came down, their light quotient would only hold so much light now. Light quotient, light quotient, whatever. I'm calling it quotient. Because the form was much denser, the form could not hold as much light that it could hold in a fifth dimension. Because the fifth dimensional form was vibrating at a much higher frequency, it could hold a higher frequency of light in the etheric body. Can't do that in a third dimension. It's way too dense, way too low. So they had to figure out what is the percentage of light that the light beam could hold when it came down and connected in and went into that etheric body. And believe it or not, it was between 1 to 3% 15,000, 16,000 years ago. We have grown significantly in terms of light inside of us, believe it or not. Like if you could tap it, if you are a light worker that's been on the earth plane helping the earth for 15,000 years, and you could remember this, it was so darn dense that only 1 to 3% of the light being that you are could move into this third dimensional body and be held. That's how dense we are. Now remember that frequency shifts. So meaning from a 3.0 to a 4.0, there's all these clicks. It's kind of like a radio station, right? And you're just turning the radio station and tapping into different stations. Frequency or consciousness, when it shifts up, is doing that same thing. So even though you're still in a third dimensional field or a third dimension, there are multiple frequencies that you feel in that as you shift, right? You don't just go from a third to a fourth. There's a huge gamut of consciousness and experience that you're having in there. You're shifting one millimeter, one kind of like that, right? Click, 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 click. So in the beginning, she was so darn dense and the physical form was so darn dense that 1 to 3% was all that could actually drop in. And so that amount of light now is much different. So now there's between 6 and 11%. And if you're a brand new starseed that's dropping in, you're probably holding 11 to 13%. And that's a huge amount of light to be holding in this dense form, which is why these starseeds are having such a difficult time, a lot of them. But anyway, so it took us around 15,000 years to be able to hold, 5-6% more light. Not the point. The point is that was one of the things they had to adjust, the light quotient that came in. The second thing they had to adjust was the DNA. Okay, so they originally created the light codes in a 12th dimensional frequency. They then moved it down into a 5th dimensional frequency by holding it in a crystalline structure within 12 strands. 12 strands of DNA, and was the physical body in the 5th dimension was able to hold that much light. It could do that. And it could hold it in a crystalline matter. No way that was going to happen in this third dimensional form, and they knew that. So they had to bring these light codes down even lower in vibration and frequency in order to be held inside of the physical form that was the third dimension. And so they recognized that carbon was a matter that could hold these light codes because carbon is malleable. So what they were saying was that carbon can shift, which is exactly what's happening right now. When everybody talks about your DNA shifting from carbon to crystalline, this is what they're talking about. You're basically kind of unraveling out of that density, the third dimensional density that's encasing the DNA and the light codes. And it's just restructuring itself back into what it originally was when it was in the form, which was crystalline, which is a higher vibrational form. So not only did they have to move it into a form such as carbon, which is way denser than crystal, It also had to reduce it to 2 strands because there was no way that the physical body in a third dimension was going to be able to hold 12 strands of light codes. Wasn't going to happen. So that shifted. And so the human, third dimensional human's DNA is squeezed into 2 strands, and it's carbon based. And so what's happening is, as these strands become activated and they start to shift, we start to recognize our multidimensionality, because the multidimensionality is in the DNA, and it's in the 12-strand crystalline DNA. So our ability to access our multisensories, clairsentience, clairaudience, clairvoyance, those types of things, our ability to tap into all these energies when you walk into a room, the ability to see things or feel things before they happen, your ability to channel, all these things which are your multisensories, the remembrances you're having, those are all aspects of your multidimensionality that are traits that you hold. Every single human being on this earth plane have these abilities. That's why when I talk and teach about channeling or anything else, it's like everybody has the ability to do it. Even Donald Trump, it doesn't matter who you are as a human being. If you have a form, guess what? You also have a 12-strand DNA that is dormant inside your carbon DNA. There's no such thing as specific physical forms that are, this one does have the 12 strands, this one doesn't have. I'm going to choose. No, they all are identical. Just like the light that we actually are all came from source, no matter who you are, what consciousness you hold, what light being you are, what choices you're making in this third dimensional realm, 12th dimensional realm, every single consciousness, which is you and me, came from source. So every consciousness or light being that dropped in has the exact same structure and has the ability to, no matter what, to access all of their multidimensionality, which is what we were designed to be able to do in a 5th dimensional consciousness. So that's what we're unraveling right now. However, when the being, light being, dropped in, so 2 things, the DNA had to change, the light quotient had to change, right? Everything else was left in place. Subtle bodies were left in place. Energetic grid was left in place. The channel was left in place. 7 energy centers, 5 energy centers, higher self, I am presence. The ego was still there. The ego, however, had to take a bigger role, but everything was still there. The blueprint was in the DNA. Difference is that there was an Akashic record that had to be created by the light being, and that Akashic record is held in the DNA. I did a video on the Akashic record a couple months ago, so I'm not going to go into that. But there was no Akashic record in the 5th dimension. You don't need an Akashic record in the 5th dimension because of the frequency in which you reside in. You remember everything. The only reason we have an Akashic record is because we have amnesia. We have no idea what the freak we're doing down here. And the consciousness is so vast and so dense that, and we have free will, that we needed a map, so to speak, and we needed to choose what it was we wanted to experience in each lifetime. 5th dimension, you don't have to do that because you are vibrating at a frequency that is high enough where even with free will and the consciousness that is there, you are always choosing the next best thing for yourself, aware of it. You're conscious of it. There's a consciousness, there's an awareness, there's a knowingness of what you're doing. The Akashic record is that map that you need when you don't remember yet. The guide that kind of like, you're just going to follow this map, the Akashic record. So when the light being drops in, this is the problem. They're dense. They're jumping into I jumped into a very dense physical body. And so the second we dropped in, you connect directly into your channel. Your light being goes right into that etheric body and you click in. And the energy centers are spinning. The 5 energy centers are spinning. The 7 energy centers are spinning. You're connected and aligned with higher self and I am presence. This is the second you're born, the second you pop out, right? Every moment that clock ticks, you start digesting 3rd dimensional consciousness. Every moment. And that consciousness moves into you and begins to dilute, so to speak, the light and the alignment and the connection that you have. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You can't get out of it. It's almost like you're trapped. And what that does is it creates amnesia. So when you first drop down, if you could remember, and there's a lot of children, by the way, that don't get amnesia as fast as others do. So there's kids 5, 6, 7, 8, especially now because they're coming in with so much more light that they're not being condensed. The third dimensional consciousness isn't blocking or clogging their light because they're holding so much more. But there's kids that remember things. I remember this lifetime. I remember this because they're not completely clogged yet. They're still connected and aligned with their higher self and I am presence and all the other beings that are around them. But what typically happens for most of us is we start digesting in experiences outside of ourselves from the moment we open our eyes and scream and cry or whatever. And that consciousness and experience comes in and starts to clog our alignment and creates amnesia. All amnesia is the inability to connect and align to your channel and to your higher self and I am presence. Soon as you start coming back into alignment, into that channel, which is where everything flows, you begin to connect to the higher self. You begin to connect to all these other energies and frequencies, and you slowly start to remember. That's what's happening to all of us. So amnesia is just the inability to align and connect and be in that channel, right? And it's a natural thing that just happens. It's just part of it. So everything inside of us is exactly what we had in the fifth dimension. It's just that we are in such a dense field of consciousness that we are being inundated by this density that literally suffocates and clogs the channel, and we forget everything. We're not attached to the higher self. We are attached to higher self. We are attached to I am presence. We are attached to these beings of light that are assisting us. We are attached to source. We're connected to all of it. You understand the quantum field. You understand everything. But you can't remember because you live in a dense consciousness that has clouded all of that, and it's clouded your channel. What we are doing now is beginning to clear out that fog, that density, over and over and over. And we're starting to recognize, holy cow, I have a channel inside here. Holy shit, I have light inside of here. Wait a second, I'm a light being. Hold on, I participated in this for so many years, right? Thousands of years. Wait a second, I volunteered. Wait a second, I'm from this star system or this galactic system. Wait a second, I have all these abilities, right? Like, this is what it means to start to remember. Many of us are still in the clearing out process, and God bless us for being in that. You can't reconnect to your channel. Remember, everything's energy. Everything's physics and energy. Everything. So if it's all energy, you can't align and connect to your channel and get clear on all of what's happening if you still have density clogging it. So for all of you that are having these emotions and these pains, especially physical pains, right? Of course there's physical pains. Think of how nauseating and painful it is to move dense consciousness literally out of the body. In order to allow you to be clear, connect in, and remember again. That's what we're doing. It's insane. It's crazy. I mean, it's a miracle if you think about it. It brings me to tears sometimes because it is a miracle that we're doing this. And, you know, the human is cute because the human beats themselves up over what we're experiencing, the anger, the rage, the fear, the pains, the wanting to get out, right? Wanting to get out of these emotions, wanting to get out of this feeling. These things that are coming up that you don't want to feel, you should be having a party when they come up because they're coming up to clear the heck out of you so that you can get closer and closer and more aligned and reconnected to that channel. Boop, I'm in. How do you know that you're connected completely? you're going to not be swayed anymore, right? So what does that mean? You're not going to be pulled into the third dimensional consciousnesses anymore. You're not going to resonate with it, and you're not going to be clearing anything out anymore. So what's happening right now is we're coming in and aligning and feeling that alignment and connecting, but then we're being pulled to these consciousnesses that are inside of us, and even the experiences outside of us, which are third dimensional consciousnesses. We're being pulled in all these different directions because we still live in this third dimensional matrix. We haven't anchored, most of us haven't anchored into the fourth dimension. If you're anchored into the fourth dimension, you're aligned, you're connected, and you aren't feeling the kind of denser human emotions, thoughts, and beliefs. But that takes a lot of clearing out. And, I hate to say this, but it's most humans are still having, if they're honest and authentic and real, because here's the thing, you guys, from 0 to whatever age you are now, every single experience was holding a third dimensional consciousness. I will say that again. From the age of 0 until whatever age you are right now, because the earth didn't start to anchor into a fourth dimensional consciousness until just recent. Okay, now I'm not going to talk about the quantum, which means that everything exists at the same time, because that doesn't help us in the now moment, because in the now moment is our reality. There's all kinds of other moments happening in this now moment, but I'm not in that now moment, so I'm going to focus on the now moment that I'm in, right? So you can go into this quantum field and you can dive into the quantumness of it all. It's not going to help you because the now moment you're in is all that matters. So get present with your now moment, right? From 0 to where you are right now, every single experience, because it was in a third dimensional matrix, holds third dimensional consciousness. Every single experience was digested through your body. And if you didn't clear it all the way out because it wasn't fun, you didn't like it, it wasn't enjoyable, it didn't feel good, guess what? It's in you. Think about all the experiences you've had, the millions and millions of experiences. And you think that we're just going to clear this out just like this? So there's a lot of... you have to honor this process. And if you can start to see it from the physical form, the third dimensional form and what it's doing, and the fifth dimensional form, which is where we're going, it's all happening naturally. It's natural. The form is natural. It's been designed to do this. We don't have to do anything but be conscious, present, aware, and open to it. And it's not easy. I always say that. I'm not saying that this is necessarily easy, but if you can start to look at the bigger picture, and now that you're hearing a little bit more about the third dimensional form versus the fifth dimensional form, everything's naturally kind of just happening for us because of all the light that's coming in. And one of the biggest messages is, can the human, from my guides, is can the human just allow the uncomfortableness to move through them? It's a gift. It's a freaking gift. It's the best thing that could happen to you. So to try to shift out of it, the humans that are trying to shift out of it and kind of skip it and move into higher frequencies, it's just another way of numbing yourself to not feel what's coming through. So, just like going to a bar and drinking a couple beers because you don't want to feel the nervousness or anxiety or loneliness. Trying to move into a higher frequency over and over and over again is the same thing. It's a numbing out so you don't have to feel what may be coming up. And like we know, regardless of what you do and how often you try to move out of it and into higher frequencies, this crap is going to come up. So if it's not now, it'll be in a year or in 2 years or in 3 years. It's all energy and physics. Your physical form cannot anchor into a fourth dimensional field or dimension without releasing all of the third dimensional consciousness. And I don't care who you are. I don't care what kind of teacher you are. I don't care what kind of work you've done. The moment you were born until this now moment, maybe a year or two before, all consciousness which is experienced. So every experience you had is third dimensional consciousness that was consumed inside your body. So unless you were in the present moment every single time, and unless you were, consciously aware of everything that was moving through you, and you felt all the pain, all the sadness, all the rage, all the anger, all the joy, all the jealousy, whatever it was, you got crap inside of you that still needs to move through. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. So one of the things my guides was saying is, they're saying that, because we know where we're moving, because we know where we're going, we want to get there. We want to be there. We don't want this anymore. I don't want this anymore. I don't want to experience this anymore. And so the human is trying to bypass it because it now knows where it's going. It's being shown, it's being taught, it's being told, it's being expressed, right? And so what does the human want? The human wants to be there, and they're trying to kind of bypass what's coming up. And there are millions of ways, not millions, but there's a lot of ways in which we can reduce the struggle and reduce the amount of pain. And one of the ways that they tell me all the time in terms of being able to process it or clear it with as much ease and grace as possible is to remember the bigger picture. Don't go into the hamster wheel. I keep talking about this in all my videos. It's so interesting. It must be a really important message, but can you keep the bigger picture and not go into the hamster wheel? Because you're not your emotions, you're not your thoughts, you're not your beliefs, but what are they? What is coming up? Right? How can you be aware of it? And how can you remember the bigger picture? And if you try to do the techniques like the positive thinking and moving into the heart space and all these things, that will assist you in that moment. But if you're doing that to deny what's coming up so you don't have to feel it, then it's only going to keep coming up. And what I mean by that is, you can tell yourself positive things. That's great. This consciousness still has to move through you. So you want to honor it. You want to acknowledge it. You don't want to feed it. I'm a bad person. I'm a bad person. I'm a bad person. I'm never going to have this. I'm never going to have this. I'm never going to. That's feeding it, as opposed to, wow, look at what's popping up. I think I'm a bad person. Look at that consciousness that's popping up that I've believed for so long. That's very different than I'm a horrible person. I'm a really bad person. Things are never good, good things are never going to happen to me. I'm never going to be able to get that job. People are never going to like me the way, whatever it is, right? I'm this and this. I'm in it. Step back. Oh, wow, look what's coming up. Look at what I think about myself. Look at what I'm saying out loud. Look at this consciousness that's coming up. This is a consciousness. This is a thought. Came from some experience in the past, probably 100 different experiences, right? That I didn't process all the way through. It's coming up. Wow. Okay. It's coming up. It's coming up to clear. I'm not that consciousness. That's just a consciousness. It's just an energy. I can positive think my way through it, but guess what? No matter how many positive things you say, this consciousness still exists. It still has to clear, you guys. It still has to clear. How does it clear? By you looking at it, honoring it, acknowledging it. Sometimes when we positive think it, it's a way of numbing out or escaping from this, right? It's a way of escaping out of it, and it works. But guess what? It works because it pulls you out of this. But guess what? This still has to clear. This still has to clear through you. Positive thinking doesn't clear it through. Positive thinking takes you out of it and into a different experience, which is great, fabulous. This is still going to come up, which is why so many of us are saying, why the freak is this still coming up? Because we've done all these things, all these techniques to get out of it and not experience it. Positive thinking is one of those. Now, if you're in a serious depressed state, positive thinking is great because it's going to assist you in not doing, you have to understand the hamster wheel in order to understand that positive thinking doesn't necessarily work. If you don't understand the hamster wheel, then this isn't going to make any sense. So when you're in a depressed state, I've been in a depressed state, I understand depression. When you're in a depressed state, you are consumed by it. And it's very challenging to step out and not get into the hamster wheel of I'm depressed, I'm a depressed person, this is my life, I'm a depressed person, this is what I do when I'm depressed. Positive thinking will help you get out of that. Depression is just a lot of these dense consciousnesses moving through you at once, and it bombards you and it shuts you down, right? So it really helps to be able to shift yourself out of it, right? With positive thinking, positive thoughts, things like that. That'll shift you out. Positive thinking is designed to shift you out of a consciousness and into another consciousness. Positive thinking is designed to shift you out of a consciousness and into another consciousness. That doesn't allow this consciousness, though, to move through you. It just takes you out of it, which is great. It can be very beneficial and very useful, but please acknowledge what it's doing. So moving into your heart space, breathing into that space is great. It's going to remind you of your multidimensionality. It's going to remind you of how awesome you are and the light being that you are, and you're freaking amazing, right? But guess what? You still got this density. And what happens is a lot of humans want to stay in these higher states, hoping that they're going to be able to anchor that in, and then all of a sudden, boom, anger comes up, rage comes up, right? The more we can tackle and understand what to do when these things pop up, the faster they move. The faster they move. So if you're used to moving into the heart space or doing these positive thinking things, when these things come up, the negative emotions, thoughts, beliefs, then these things are going to keep coming up. But if you can look at them and say, yes, hallelujah, look at this crap that's coming up. I'm extremely uncomfortable. I don't like this. This is torture. This is really freaking hard. I don't want to be doing this anymore. Thank you for showing up. How long are you going to be here? I'm not in the hamster wheel. I'm not these thoughts. I'm not these beliefs. I am not this. But I'm just kind of wondering, can you kind of move faster than normal? Like maybe the next 5 hours instead of like a day and a half, right? That's how you get, instead of, because when I go through the things I go through, if I move into my heart space, I can move into my heart space. I know who I am. I know the light that I am. I know that I'm source. I know that I'm one with everything. I know that. All that's going to do is remind me of that, which is great. But this still needs to be recognized. So as long as I am recognizing this at the same time that I'm moving into my heart, great. But if I'm moving into my heart space to ignore this and to try to make this go away, ain't gonna happen. If I try to positive think my way out of it so that I don't have to feel this, it ain't gonna happen. It's like any other numbing thing we do. Shopping, binge eating, what else do we do? Drinking, whatever we do to numb ourselves or to not feel what we don't want to feel. Doing spiritual things is the same thing sometimes. So if we can get conscious of that, it's really important. It's really important. And this is not for everyone. This is just for myself and for anyone else out there that's experiencing this, right? I mean, I always share from my own experiences, and this is what works for me. And I can tell you that I process and clear faster than I ever have before. I'm processing and clearing all the freaking time. And I could very easily not and stay in higher states of consciousness just by meditating all day or, doing whatever it is that I could possibly figure out to do. But I'd be denying my human experience, and I'd be denying anchoring in that fourth dimension and moving into that fifth dimension and being able to do what the physical form is designed to do. So I got sidetracked. What else is new? So, but I guess that was really important to share. And if it triggered somebody or just didn't resonate, then I'm sure you probably already turned off the video, but it's a great way to look at our process and to look at the authenticity of it. It's the authentic journey that we're on, and being humble and honest about it. And if you understand this, what's happening and how we dropped in and how dense it was when we dropped in and how we had amnesia because of the consciousness that came in, nothing's your fault. Nothing's your fault. You didn't do a freaking thing wrong. You volunteered or agreed to jump into the body, but you didn't do anything wrong once you were in. You just were playing in a field of consciousness that is so dense that your body couldn't clear it, and process it. In a fifth dimensional form, you're at such a high frequency that any consciousness that you're experiencing and digesting in goes right through you. It's clear. The energy is clear. The energy is speeding faster, way faster. Consciousness in the third dimension is so slow that even if you're trying to clear it out, it gets stuck. Consciousness in a fifth dimension, boom, goes right through you. There's nothing to hold on to. There's no past. There's no memories of a bad thing happening or some sort of trauma. Nothing like that happens. First of all, the consciousness doesn't exist in that space. But aside from that, everything is processed and digested instantaneously. So there's nothing you did wrong in regards to anything that you're purging out of you, clearing out of you right now. It's your human experience is what you're doing. From zero to where you are right now, guess what? You're clearing all that crap out. So there's a lot of people that say, well, how long is this going to take? I don't know. How much consciousness did you digest inside of you? I digested a crap ton. You know, I had a crap ton of trauma that I digested when I was younger. And as much as I keep thinking that I've cleared it, guess what? Keeps coming up. Little pieces, right? Little pieces. You start to recognize, well, it's not as intense as 3 months ago, right? But I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it because I know what it's doing. It's bringing me to the next highest version of me. It's clearing this out so my amnesia is gone. So bring it on. I don't hide from anything that comes up. I don't try to shift myself out of it at all. Because first of all, I know that it moves. That's energy. Everything's energy. Everything's physics. It moves. Energy, the only reason energy stays stuck and stagnant inside the physical form is that the density of the form and the energy that's spinning gets stuck and our consciousness doesn't attach to it to allow it to move through. So we forget about it. We don't want to look at it. We don't want to experience it or feel it. The way you process anything through you is by looking at it and feeling it. You feel the thought, you hear the thought, you feel the belief, you hear the belief, you feel the emotion, you see the emotion in your third eye, you just feel it, and that's how you clear it out. That's how you process. That's how you devour the human experience. You devour your human experience by looking at what's popping up with a flag saying, hey, look over here. And you grab it and you say, thank you for showing up because you're allowing me to get more clean and clear and light. And I'm going to hold you and look at you and feel you, but I am not you until I don't feel or see or hear you anymore. That's how you clear. That's how you process. That's how you let it through. And just because we're all already whole, which we are, we're a freaking light being. Of course we're whole. We're a light being from a much higher consciousness. Of course we are already whole. But we've also been living in a third dimensional frequency, consuming third dimensional consciousness for so many years that you have to purge and clear that out. You can't bypass it. It's going to come out. So anyway, third dimensional form, fifth dimensional form. I hope it was useful because what we're doing is we're shifting back into that fifth dimensional form. And it's all within us. And so now when people say 12-strand DNA, you'll understand, oh, I get that, what that means. The crystalline DNA, oh, I get what that means. And it's getting activated and quote unquote kind of turning on, first of all, naturally. And second of all, through the light that's coming down onto the planet, the higher frequency lights that are coming down into us that we're consuming and integrating into our physical forms, they're higher light codes, they're higher light vibrations. And so they are breaking through that carbon, kind of cracking the carbon and turning on or activating the 12 strands that are within it. That are dormant, basically, that can't exist in a form that is low vibrational. So it works in conjunction. Is that a word, conjunction? I have no idea if that's a word. They're working together As your frequency raises inside your physical form, the carbon starts to peel away, more of the crystalline DNA starts to appear. The more higher frequency, the more the 12 strands start to appear more and more. And also all these other aspects of you start to turn on. It's all naturally happening, you guys. It's just a natural process. For some of us, it's happening faster than others. I don't know the reason for that, other than there's a lot of consciousness inside of you that needs to be looked at and moved through. I'm not going to go into it again. What I was going to say was, I think there's a lot of us that think that if we feel anger, there's something wrong with us. We're not in a high vibrational state. If we think if we're feeling rage or sadness or whatever we may be feeling, if we feel that, that means I'm not in a high vibrational state. And it's the opposite. It's like you're moving into that. This is popping up so that you can be in a higher vibrational state. Yeah. Anyway, all right. I hope this was useful. I hope you understood or were able to digest the third dimension and the fifth dimensional form. We're moving into this. And how amazing is it to recognize and remember that this form we're in right now is holding everything that the fifth dimensional form held. We got it all. We're ready to go. It's like, oh yeah, of course we are. Of course it's all inside of us. Of course it's designed this way. It's magic. It's magic. What we're doing is miraculous and magical. And we're doing it, no matter what. I love you guys so much. My first live YouTube Q&A is April 16th, so in 15 days. I'm so excited. It's at 4 p.m. Pacific. So if you're not subscribed to my channel, subscribe. And then after you subscribe, there's a little button, I think, on the right-hand side. And if you click it, it'll tell you that you're going to get notifications. And that's how you'll get notified that I'm going live. So April 16th is the first one. That's a Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific. I'm really excited. I'm just going to jump on and we're just going to talk and do Q&A, all kinds of fun stuff. If you liked this video, please like it. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. I love this growing community that we have. And if there's anybody that you know that would resonate with this video, please pass it along to them. And I will see you next time with another subject. Love you guys so much. Be gentle with yourselves. Bye.